now declare the meeting open and I'll call for apologies and leave of absence. We have no apologies, so I'll move on to item 2, community consultation. We have 3 speakers listed tonight. We first all have Brooke Southwell, and I can call you to the podium, please, Brooke. Just state the item that you're speaking to, please.
Thank you. I'm speaking to the notice of motion. Right to go? Yep. Mr Mayor, councillors, executive team and community members. When I saw the notice of motion before me, I was thrilled. Finally, this issue has been brought to light. I'm supportive of the notice of motion, and as such, I'd like to share some of my story when running for council and being elected as a female. It was sunset. I was driving down Brisbane Street one afternoon and stopped at the lights on Cable Avenue. I looked up at the old cinema building to see an advertisement for candidate Mark Sutherland, a guy I've known for many years, an outstanding candidate. But I thought then, wow, good on you, Mark. That's amazing. You'll do so well. But if Mark can do it, so can I. A heated discussion that night with my husband about the pros and cons of running for council, and within days, I'd submitted my information to put my hat in the ring, so to speak. Excited and somewhat scared, I informed my employer at the time, but sadly it was not met with the excitement that I expected. They said, either run for council or work here, but you can't do both. I strongly encourage you to reconsider running for council. Leaving in tears, the decision had already been made. I was days into the decision with no job, 3 kids, and I hadn't even started basically advertising myself yet to the community. What was next? Holy crap, what have I done? The campaign trail was long and tiring. I had limited funds to market myself, needed to focus on my new employment, all while raising 3 girls under 7. I remember heading to one of the pre-polls after work, 3 kids in tow, trying to talk to as many people as I could. I thought I'll buy them all a milkshake, I'll have the iPad going in the car, and I'll see how I go before my 3-year-old really cracks it. It's funny to look back on, really. But at the end of the day, campaigning stops for no one. With limited support, it had to be done. I'd be lying if I wasn't slightly envious of some of my male counterparts who were comfortable in acknowledging that they had employees, family members, or campaign managers to run their whole campaign. Obviously, not everyone was the same, but there was some. Once elected, I couldn't believe it. For years, TRC had a strong male presence, both in the executive and the elected officials. But I'd managed to crack in. A typical day on council for me would be wake up, 5 a.m, emails from my job, emails back to council community members, breakfast, kids' lunches, off to work, come home, cook dinner, kids' sport, hand over to the babysitter, council workshops, home, cleaning, washing, reading, more council reading, work, a few more emails, asleep, and then repeat. It sort of felt like being pulled in 10 different directions. And I'm sure many males can really agree with what I'm talking about tonight as well. These are sacrifices you make when something's important. The best part about being on council was I love seeing my girls, my 3 daughters, see me out making decisions for the community, showing them that girls can do it too. Finally, in summary, I'd just like to say that being on council was one of the best experiences. I'm so grateful for being elected, but I also relate to the info from the ANU research report that states the limitations of the role: inadequate remuneration, heavy time commitment, limited power, gender stereotypes. Helping women stand for the election is one thing, but advocacy to change the conditions so their role is fair, safe and sustainable is another. I couldn't agree more that truly inclusive councils create a cultural shift. What does a cultural shift look like? Everyone in this room could be part of that shift. How can you lift women up? How can you support female leaders in the community? How can you, councillors tonight, help women by supporting this notice of motion? Because diversity in decision making makes better outcomes for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Brooke. I'll now call on second speaker tonight, Tanya Giacomo. I'm not sure whether I pronounced your last name correctly or not.
That was actually perfect. Yep, just as it comes. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to address Council tonight. My name is Professor Tanya Giacomo from the Australian National University, and I conducted the research referred to in Councillor Ryan Brooks' motion 6.1. I would like to start by thanking the councillors and the community leaders who spoke to me earlier this year in relation to this report. There are significant benefits for a council that reflects its broader population. Now, in my report, I outline why people in the community, including this community, thought diversity of life experience matters. Here I want to note some of the international evidence. Large quantitative studies that measure council performance are conclusive. Diversity and greater female representation is correlated with better financial management, other indicators of good governance, a more equal share of budget to services and infrastructure related to women's needs, as well as improved accessibility of council to all residents. Tamworth Regional Council, which has no women councillors, would benefit from having a greater diversity of life experiences amongst its councillors. This is, of course, no disrespect to the current councillors who I know want to do the best for their community. Nonetheless, action is required. Patterns of representation reproduce over time. So what I mean by this is that when we have a male-dominated council, it can reproduce so that we have male-dominated councils over the decades. This is because women can be discouraged from contesting when the councillors are overwhelmingly men. Recruitment and mentoring of prospective councillors can occur within male-centred social networks, while it also sends a message to the community about what leadership looks like. So action is required to turn around a male-dominated council to one which has a greater diversity of voices. And by this I mean not just women, but diverse in respect to cultural background, class, disability, and especially important in Tamworth Regional Council, reflects its geographical dispersion. Saying action is required is not blaming the people who have been elected. I respect every person who puts their hand up to serve the community. At the same time, neither should we simply blame women. My research shows that they do not lack ambition, nor do they lack aptitude to be a councillor. Environmental conditions are a major factor in who contests and who wins elections. Council has the power, and I suggest the responsibility, to change some of these conditions. These conditions include networks of encouragement and mentoring, relationships between the council as an organisation and other groups, formal and informal recognition of a diversity of community leaders, and indeed thinking about the way that leadership is understood, and council procedures that facilitate participation by people with diverse personal circumstances. Motion 6.1 identifies evidence-based steps to get greater diversity of voices on council. Now, I speak in support of the motion, obviously, but my job as a researcher is not to tell you what to do, but to present the evidence for you to consider what is both locally appropriate and feasible. So I'm very grateful to Councillor Ryan Brooke and the Inclusive Leadership Network for engaging with my research and the work they have done in considering what out of that research should be taken to Tamworth. So I urge you to support and can answer any questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your presentation. The third speaker tonight is Judy Coates.
As always, the microphone comes down. Mr Mayor, councillors, community members and executive staff. First of all, I'm speaking to this notice of motion and I want to thank Councillor Ryan Brooks for bringing it to the table. I won't actually go over any of what's been in the research because I think that's been covered quite well. But first of all, I want to say fact one, Tamworth LGA has always lagged behind the state average when it comes to gender diversity in council. Fact two, 2016-17, the state average was 31%. Tamworth had 11% female. 2021, the state average was 39%. Tamworth Council had 33% women. Fact three, 2024, Tamworth LGA has 0% female representation and the state average is actually 40.5%. Fact 4, in the Tamworth LGA, according to the 2021 census, 51% are female and 49% are male. Fact 5, 12% identify as Aboriginal Torres Strait Islander. And fact 6, 8.4% were born in a non-English speaking country. So where is the diversity? What happened in our last local government election? And what is the difference between Tamworth LGA and others in the state? For me, the most important question is how can we get increased diversity, not just gender, but overall, in our local council? Quotas are certainly not the answer. It won't result in any change because we live in a democratic society which gives people the choice around who they vote for. And from my perspective, there are three sides to this debate. First of all, the role of the community. Secondly, the role of councillors at the time. And thirdly, the role of the council itself. Taking the last one first, in my opinion, council, the organisation has very little role to play in this debate other than to ensure that community are kept up to date and informed about issues that affect them and to support the councillors. And when talking about the role of councillors, I'm really talking about leadership. Leadership qualities are not tied to gender, race, religion or culture, but are about effective communication, emotional intelligence, integrity, empathy, accountability, visionary and strategic thinking, making well-informed, timely and on occasions difficult decisions, and utilising strong problem-solving skills. Leaders must work as a team and councillors won't always agree. However, with robust discussion and debate in a safe and respectful environment where all opinions are heard and values, decisions can be made. A good council is elected by voters who understand the election process as well as the current and future issues. Being elected as a civic leader is an honour which should come with both pride and humility. It shouldn't be something that people avoid for the negative connotations associated with it. A councillor should have the ability to communicate effectively so that every voice in the community, no matter how small, is heard and represented. It is not about everyone getting what they want. Wants versus needs is always an emotional debate in families, in business and in government. Leaders need to be developed, nurtured, supported and mentored, not to become mini versions of other leaders, but more confident and informed versions of themselves. And initially, potential leaders may need to be identified and tapped on the shoulder. Voters, on the other hand, should be informed, as I said, about the process of voting, that all votes are not equal and the number one is the most important. Voters should also have a sound understanding of issues and the consequences for community and region. Community apathy and criticism shouldn't have a seat at that table at all. The recent Tamworth local government election was complicated significantly by the special rate variation debate, and the negative message around the SRV targeted voters emotionally and resonated with many, making it a very effective strategy. And there also appeared to be that lack of information and understanding about the process. The push for diversity and getting more women elected has to come from the whole of community. And just as it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a community to build leaders. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. That concludes community consultation, and we'll move on to item 3 on the agenda, minutes from the previous meeting. I would like a move and a second. Move Councillor Mears, second to Councillor Butt. Councillor Mears.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just one minor amendment on page 17, the last page of the last minutes. Could we correct the reference to Col Murray as a previous mayor to our current mayor? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mears. The second to accept that. All those in favour of the minutes, apart from that being a true and correct record?
Aye.
Carried unanimously. Councillors, we'll now move on to item 4 on the business paper. Disclosure of interest. Do we have any disclosures of interest? We have no disclosures of interest. I'll move on to item 5, Merrill Minute. There is no Merrill Minute, so we'll move on straight on to item 6, the one that a number in the audience are interested in tonight. Notice of motion. Councillor Brooke, would you like to move that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I'll move the motion as printed in the business
Do
paper.
we have a seconder? We have a second to Councillor Impey. Councillor Brooke, you can speak to that now.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to begin by thanking Professor Tanya Yakmal for travelling to Tamworth to address us and to give us the opportunity to ask her about her research ahead of time, as well as former councillors Judy Coates and Brooke Southwell. It's particularly helpful to have their influence on this, both as leading community members and as individuals who know what it's like to sit at this table. Because getting that insight from women in our community really gets at the heart of what this motion is about. When we have a council of only men, we're missing half the population's perspectives, experiences and networks. We're failing women who might need to approach council about sensitive issues. We're sending a troubling message to young women about their place in civic leadership, and we're limiting our own effectiveness as representatives. The professor's recent research from the ANU Global Institute of Women's Leadership demonstrates that councils that achieve gender parity show improved performance, better community responsiveness, and stronger democratic legitimacy. Several of us in this chamber, along with various community members from our region, contributed to that research, and the evidence is clear. Councils with representation from the diversity within their communities are well placed to serve those communities better. Now, I've heard the response that this is just how people voted, this is democracy at work. And yes, elections reflect choices made by our community, but the research shows us something crucial. These choices don't happen in a vacuum. They happen in an environment that we, as a council, can help shape. This motion isn't about tokenism or about meeting some arbitrary quota. It's about recognising that a diversity of lived experience is crucial to inform the decision-making we do in this chamber. As councillors, we have a unique responsibility here. We could rest in the democratic process and claim no agency in the situation, but we do have agency. Through our actions, both in this chamber and in the community, we influence the environment for local government participation. To that effect, this motion proposes practical steps across 3 key areas that are within the ability of council to take, with the goal of shaping an environment where diverse representation is more likely to happen by itself. First, the encouragement of proactive recruitment and mentoring from within the community. The research shows that targeted recruitment works. When communities actively identify and tap potential leaders on the shoulder to encourage candidacy, it's particularly effective. We can work with diverse community organisations to encourage them to build programs where the community actively identifies, mentors and gets behind and supports potential leaders. Second, enhance accessibility. We can review our practices around council obligations, such as meeting times and childcare provisions, to identify barriers we might not even realise exist. Small changes can make a significant difference. And third, recognition and engagement with the position we are in. As councillors, we can use our position in this chamber to encourage reflection and debate about representation within our local democracy. I also hope we follow this up with our own individual actions outside of this place. But a commitment here that we take the topic of diverse representation seriously, and that we encourage residents to consider what they could contribute to civic leadership via perspectives and lived experiences that they don't see represented on council currently, is a strong message to send to the community. I want to be clear, this change won't come from council alone. Community groups, local media, the Office of Local Government, everyone has a role to play here. But we have a disproportionate opportunity to influence the communities we represent. And I believe we have a responsibility to use that opportunity. The actions outlined in this motion align with policies we've already adopted: our communication strategy, the community strategic plan, and Blueprint 100. This isn't asking us to go in a new direction. It's asking us to live up to the values of resilient and diverse communities and open and collaborative leadership we've already committed to. This is about building a council that we can say truly reflects all of the Tamworth region. It's about ensuring that when women in our community look at their local government, they see a place where they belong and where their voices matter. So I commend the motion to my fellow councillors and I urge them to support it.
Thanks, Councillor Brooke. Anyone wish to speak against that notice of motion or that recommendation? Any further comments on that notice of motion? Councillor Mears.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I rise to strongly support this motion because it's about ensuring that leadership in Tamworth reflects the people who make this region thrive, and that absolutely includes women. Right now, Tamworth Regional Council is the only council in New South Wales without any elected female councillors. It's not about ability or ambition. It's about the barriers that still exist for women who want to step into public leadership. This motion is about changing that reality through practical, sustained action. Research from Professor Tanya Yakimov at ANU shows that when women and people from diverse backgrounds are represented, council performs better, make fairer decisions and earn greater community trust. When women are in leadership, whether on council, in management or in community roles, we see broader perspectives, stronger collaboration and outcomes that better reflect everyone's needs. That is why this motion commits to working with women and multicultural groups, building mentoring pathways and reviewing how council operates so more people can participate regardless of family, work or access barriers. To the women in our organisation and across the community, your voice matters. Your experience, empathy and insights are invaluable. This motion is an invitation to get involved, to mentor others and to consider putting your hand up for civic leadership. Let's make sure that the next generation of girls and young women in Tamworth can look at their council and see leaders that look like them and know that they too belong here. I proudly support this motion.
Councillor Sutherland. Councillor Mears, if you can turn your...
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I'm speaking in support of the notice of motion and thank Councillor Brooke for putting forward this notice of motion. Thank you to the speakers that got up in support. As a council, it's important to acknowledge that there's very little that we can do in some regards in shaping the outcomes of an election. Now, there's some really strict rules around what councils can do and the role that we can play. And so it is a fine line that we can tread, and I think that this notice of motion really brings us up to that line and to the place that we need to be able to advocate for the need for diversity. As Brooke Southwell mentioned, diversity in decision making leads to better outcomes, and there's global research that supports how diversity in decision making leads to better outcomes right across the board. As councillors, I think recognising the lack of diversity puts a commitment on us as an organisation to review some of the policies and procedures that we have to see what we can do better, but also help shape the culture that we can in our sphere of influence as councillors. And it's interesting when you unpack gender diversity and even this concept of, as a man growing up within a diverse community myself, how we still don't understand the levels of privilege that we might appreciate as individuals. And as a father, I'm starting to understand it more and more. And I'll share my rationale behind that thought. As a young person, I've always been keen on sport. Yeah, and I knew that turning up to school every day, I could recess and lunch, kick a ball, play soccer, play footy, do whatever. I was always prepared for anything, and I was always open for everything. And nothing about what was happening around me limited that. As a father of a daughter, what she can do on any given day depends on her uniform. If she's not dressed for sport, she can't do sport. Little things that I've taken for granted, that we take for granted, is massive in shaping what people's experience can be. And as an all-male council, there's things that we just don't see. There's things we can't see because we've never seen. And so by reviewing our policies and practices, we can try to make sure that those blind spots that are inherent within male-dominated systems can provide spaces and a culture of inclusivity that means that anyone is prepared, that anyone is available to take on a position. And there's nothing restricting that from a cultural standpoint from us as a group of leaders elected within the organisation. And so for me, it's just reflecting on my own experience. As a person who's grown up in an Aboriginal community, who's come from a diverse community myself, there's still elements of that privilege that I've inherited as being a bloke. And the research which I'm so thankful has been able to be published and brought to us in the way that has aired a perspective that in somewhat is foreign to me, because it's aired and highlighted aspects of the world that is a blind spot to me because of my own implicit bias. And as a council, there's a role that we can play. And I think this notice of motion brings us up to that point and helps us to advocate for greater change, to make sure that these patterns of repetition that are produced over time for us as a regional council, having a lack of representation of diversity, can come from a cultural shift. And for us as councillors, we can be at the forefront of changing what that culture can be. So I am speaking in support of that notice of motion. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Sutherland. Councillor Rodder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I consider myself a budding psephologist, which to many that might not know about it, it's essentially a nerdy interest in elections, election results and election outcomes. The 2024 TRC local government elections may have been a bit of an anomaly as elections go by not electing any female candidates, but I think it would be a big mistake to say our electors got their voting decisions wrong last election because no female candidates were elected, particularly as female electors, I should say, make up more than 50% of the TRC local government area. If this is what this motion seeks to do, then I repudiate it. The voters always get the decision right, even if we personally think they haven't. Extrapolating the results, you need to look at the candidates that stood and the parties or interests they were aligned with. At the September 2024 local government elections, there were 9 female candidates to 15 male candidates. 2 were aligned with the ALP under Group A of the ALP, and 4 were aligned with the Greens under Group B of the Greens. The other 3 listed the title independent but held various political proclivities. In a strong Conservative region such as ours, the female ALP and Green candidates were always going to struggle to glean enough votes to be elected, just as the male candidates also struggled beyond the top 2 male lead candidates. Many voters will think motions like this to be reeking of paternalism and just plain insulting to women. We have 2 former female councillors here tonight. Did they need to have any special help to get elected in 2021? No, they did not. They did what the male candidates did in that campaign and turn up to early voting booths and polling booths on election day. We shouldn't pretend to go down the path of gender discrimination when it was the policies that the female candidates had that voters disliked, just as much as the male candidates. Former councillor Judy Coates got elected in 2021, which I heartily congratulate her for. In 2024, she ran again, and as people strolled past her at the early voting booth, she specifically promoted herself as Judy Coates' female candidate, and subsequently, she was not elected. Presumably, 50% of the voters that walked past her at the voting booth on election day and prior were also women. And let's not forget that two of the non-party aligned female candidates ran on platforms that supported most of Council's previous agenda, a deeply unpopular agenda that reflected positively in the vote of those who were deeply opposed it. That's democracy. None of us here gets to choose who becomes a councillor. The ratepayers of Tamworth Regional Council decide on that, and motions like this are basically telling the ratepayers that last year you got it wrong. The motion may also imply that voters are secretly sexist or misogynistic because they did not vote for any female candidates, despite the fact that more than 50% of the voters are women. Outside of my own election campaign, I have never been morally presumptuous enough to start telling the voters how they should vote, and I'm not going to start now. What we need are the best candidates, regardless of gender or other characteristics such as ethnicity. Candidates that, if elected, will always put the public interest ahead of personal interests, ambitions, parties or interests of minorities, developers, builders, real estate agents and influential business owners. Not a group of elected representatives that act like a party and vote together on many issues and matters of concern to our residents. I could never support quotas, but I believe we should always be looking to attract and support the best candidates, male or female, from all ethnic backgrounds. I will be opposing the motion because I think we need to get back to fixing potholes and roads and other issues within Council's remit. I'm not sure this motion will address the lack of current female representation on TRC, just as much as Gunnedah Shire didn't have to go down such a path either, and it has 6 female representatives. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Ryder. Further speakers? Councillor Impey.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Well, look, I think this notice of motion is one of the more important, impactful notices of motions that I have seen. In my very short time, I was on council between 16 and 21, very few notices of motion during that time. And of course, I was very fortunate and very honoured to be part of the team of 9 councillors again in this current term. So I think this notice of motion is important. It is a motion that is holistically, broadly looking at our community as it is. And that is 51% female, 49% male. And it's important that whether it be 9 councillors at a table like this, or boards of directors, or senior management teams within businesses, or even chairs and so forth on volunteer committees, it's important that all of those groups collectively are representative of the entire community. And I believe that's the guts of what this notice of motion is. It's to put that out there in spotlight, and backed up by a very strong report by one of our speakers tonight, Tanya, from the ANU. I'm a father of a daughter, father of a stepdaughter, a brother of 2 sisters, and the son of a mum, of course. I work in an area of employment that is 90% odd, dominated by females. I work in a school that is 60% girls, students. So I'm surrounded by the enormous gifts, talents and richness that being around females can provide. I'm also the husband, nearly forgot this one, of an extraordinary young lady who is just the light of my life, and she is she's an amazing person. And that's what we want. We want more amazing people in roles of leadership in our community. Not just council, but council can play a lead role. We're not talking about council as the organisation going out there and pushing it, because we can't do that, of course, we know, it's within the Act. But we can talk about councillors going out to our networks and talking to people amongst community groups, amongst our working groups. We have a youth council that is predominantly female populated as well. And that is a very, very well-functioning youth council, as we've talked about a lot. So the diversity and the greater female representation is a good thing for all areas of our community. And as a council, as an organisation, and as a group of 9 leaders in our community, we ought to be taking the lead in that. And I will certainly be inspired through this notice of motion in going forward, by the time we get to the next election, to be talking to as many males and females as I possibly can to encourage those people to take up lead roles in our community.
Thank you. Further speakers? Councillor Sharpen.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Yeah, I took a couple of the notes that our speakers said, and one in particular was the remuneration. Any time it is brought forward, it's come with a lot of public criticism, and I do agree it's certainly not enough for what we put ourselves through, and I think there's a big cultural distaste in social media which would prevent a lot of females from coming on. It is brutal, the decisions we make. They're not always the easiest decisions, but we get criticised for them. So it is very difficult for women, and I accept that. It's a real shame we don't have them here. But I cannot support this motion tonight. To say that our voters got it wrong is just insulting to them. We did have 9 women on the ballot, and for the two that sit here before us today that were on the tickets, perhaps next time you could put the females above you, and they can get a chance to get elected. Most of our committee members are made up of women, and they bring the committees is where the real hard work happens, that come before us for these decisions, and they shape the way our council work and operate. So, yeah, tonight I can't support this motion. Thanks, Mr Mayor.
Further speakers? Councillor Budd.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Bogan.
I'm going to support this motion for a number of reasons. Firstly, it's been great to work with Ryan as he put this motion together and addressing the issues that no one in this chamber should object to the encouragement of women to participate, the encouragement of people, men and women, to be involved in council. But can I say, I think it's important to note, do we really understand what stopped women getting involved in this process in the first place in this last election? I'd really like to recognise the former female councillors in Tamworth Regional Council. I've known many of them for many years. They've been strong advocates for community. They've done some fantastic work, and some of them have done their time and moved on, which is fantastic. Others, unfortunately, didn't make it through the process last year. And we had some really good female candidates in the process last year. But I really feel community, they made the vote, and that's fine. But I really fear they've been misled during that campaign. We'd all acknowledge that campaign was a particularly toxic and nasty campaign, and it continues today. So if you're a female in our community saying, I'd like to get involved with council and represent, that's what you face. Some of those social media folk that just cannot help themselves with their toxicity, and that is an absolute, I believe, a barrier for women getting involved in from our community in our council. So to community, please talk against bad social media, talk against negativity. We should all be involved in positive conversations. We should all involve ourselves wherever we can with community groups and encouraging strong, smart women to get involved with council and help lead. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Budd. Further comments? There being no further comments, I'll now put the recommendation, and I'll ask those in favour to raise their hand and say aye. Aye. Those opposed? So we have 7-2. We have the names. Thank you. Councillors, that concludes the debate on that, and for those in the audience that came particularly for that item, if you wish to leave, don't feel that you have to stay, but you're more than welcome to stay. Councillors, we'll now move on to open council reports, and we'll go to item 7.1. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Move Councillor Budd, second to Councillor Impey. Do you wish to speak to that, Councillor Budd? Anyone wish to speak against that? Anyone wish to make further comment on that particular item? No further comments. I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Carried unanimously. We'll now move on to governance and finance. I'll get to my paper. Council investments, 9.1. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Move Councillor. Sorry. You are 9.1, aren't we?
Yep.
Yeah, sorry. Move Councillor Sutherland, second to Councillor Mears. You wish to speak to that, Councillor Sutherland?
No, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against that? Anyone wish to make comment on that? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Carried unanimously. Councillors, we'll move now to item 9.2. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Move Councillor Sharpen, second to Councillor Mears. Councillor Sharpen, you wish to speak to that?
No, thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against that? Any further comments? No. Yes, Councillor Rodder.
Just in relation to, in the table, it mentions project costing $800,564. Could we just get an explanation of that? I assume that to be an overrun. Or could we just get an explanation about that?
I'm going to ask, through your acting GM, if Cheryl would like to make comment on that, if you can.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. On the last page of the annexure, there is a heading there for project costing, which lists the item that make up that amount. So we've got some fencing that was carried out at the TWGP, but the main item there was, which is actually a bit of good news, we've used some of the funds from last year's sales of the TWGP to pay additional off the TWGP internal loan that we have with the sewer fund. So, yeah, which is good news.
Answer your question, councillor Rodder. Thank you. Any further questions? I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye. Raising the hands, carried unanimously. We'll move now on to item 9.3. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Move Councillor Sharpen, seconded Councillor Impey. Councillor Sharpen, you wish to speak to that?
Only very briefly, Mr Mayor. It's not a very exciting thing, but I think for the staff it will be to have some reliable computer gear going forward. The technology moves very quickly in this world, and it's good to see that they've trying to keep up with it.
Anyone wish to speak against? Any further comments on the recommendation? There being Councillor Brooke.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I also make a quick comment. I disagree with Councillor Sharpen here in some respect. We do share a profession outside of this place. I do think this is very exciting, this renewal of a workstation fleet. But I do want to say that we've been presented a couple of different methodologies here, and I do tend to agree with taking the approach of replacing the whole fleet in one go instead of doing it piecemeal. That also sort of lines up with my professional experience outside of this place as well.
Further comments, councillors? Councillor Rodder and then Councillor Mears.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I guess my preference would have been for staggering, particularly, I know there's a need for 650. Is there really a need, given that there are significant outdoor staff, is there a reason why we would need to have equal amount of laptops and desktop computers to match the number of staff, including the outdoor staff? And what efforts would council be undertaking in the future to potentially stagger such a cost and therefore deferring it more, as many New South Wales state government departments seem to do? Surely there would be savings, or the cost wouldn't be that prohibitive to avoid such a large lump sum payment by not staggering.
Councillor Rodder, I can partly answer that question, and I guess you can too, but at the last meeting, I know the General Manager asked would the councillors be happy for us to do this because it was going to save a lot and actually create the environment that we would all go together. It would be more beneficial to the whole organisation to do that, and that's why it's here tonight in front of us as a recommendation, but I don't know if you want to add to that.
Okay. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you. Councillor Rodder, the staff have started this transition over to 365, and due to some issues in our IT department, it was stalled. So for us to actually do this as quickly as possible, this is the situation that we have presented to councillors. If we stagger it out, we would still have half the organisation on 365 and half the organisation not, and that is very inefficient in how we've been running recently, and we need to get this done, and by doing it now and doing it all at once, we can get it done before Christmas and have the staff all communicating effectively and efficiently on one platform.
Does that answer your question?
Partially. I did understand the rationale for rolling it all out, but was more, I guess, looking to the future. 365 will probably be around for a while. There probably will be versions of 365 updated over time, but what would council do in the future to avoid a big lump sum purchase of 650 laptops and desktop computers into the future, and by, I guess, staggering that? And second, and the other question I did ask was, with a number of outdoor staff, do they all need a laptop as well, or could the desktops back at the depot or whatever be utilised amongst all, a number of staff, as often happens or has happened historically in other I guess, state government departments?
Are you in a position to answer that? I can offer something.
Mr Mayor, through you, I can clarify that not all outdoor staff have a computer. The supervisors who work out of the depots certainly have computers. Some of the staff out in the field use their phones to access QR codes and to do some of their startups and things like that, but they don't have computers. Mr. Mayor.
Do you want to make a further comment? Acting GM?
Yeah, so the transition from desktops to laptops makes us more mobile when we move around. So that's why the desktops are being transitioned to laptops for staff. That means that we can work from anywhere and plug into, because we're working across 6 different offices, we can plug into any workstation and the computers will work. In relation to staggering it, whether you replace them all at once or whether you replace them over years, you're still spending the same amount of money. So you can stagger it out or you can replace them all at once, but the cost is still there.
Councillor Mears. Further questions, councillors? Councillor Budd.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I raise to speak on this, being probably the most technologically inept person in the room. I have nowhere near Councillor Sharp and Councillor Brooks' skill level whatsoever. But I understand that when we go to this upgrade, which we're doing now through the IT department, which I might add has been well budgeted for, well in advance. This is not money we're drawing upon from future funds or from any other source. It's been well funded and sitting there ready to go. I understand as we go to 365, and for those at the table here, we understand we've been on 365 for some time, and we're not into matching with the current system that the staff have. And indeed, some of their laptops are 5 and 6 years of age and are not going to work under this 365 as well. So I understand that, and I commend the motion. Thank you.
Further comments, councillors? If there are no further comments, I'll put the recommendation. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Carried unanimously. Councillors will now move to community services. Item 10.1. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please? Move Councillor Brooke, seconded Councillor North. Councillor Brooke, you wish to make comment?
Reserve the right, Mr Mayor.
Anyone wish to speak against the recommendation? Any further comments on the recommendation? Councillor Rodder.
Just, Mr Mayor, I'd like to raise a matter arising.
You may. Further comments, councillors? Councillor Sharpen.
Only briefly, just to congratulate the staff on all the work that's gone into the museum. And it's not directly related, but it was a fantastic opening we had down there. And I think they're very happy with their new space.
Any further comments, councillors? There being no further comments, all those in favour, say aye. Carried unanimously. Councillor Roddy, you had a matter arising.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Just in relation to, I'll just have to find the, there was in the minutes, there was a mention of preserving a Union Jack flag from, I think, the outdoor movie cinema. And I was just asking, and because of its historical significance to World War I and Tamworth, and I was just going to ask the question about an honour flag, a flag called the honour flag. Nobody would really know what this is, but in 1917, towns and districts which subscribed twice their quota of funds to the Commonwealth Government's 7th War Loan were presented with a flag, and sometimes they were presented with variations of that flag. Tamworth Municipal Council did get one, and it was actually located in the town hall, underneath the in the dungeon of the town hall. It was actually in poor condition, and I can remember as a collector of flags, I was actually asked if I wanted all these old flags that were being thrown out, and I didn't realise the historical significance of that flag at the time. But about 4 or 5 years ago, I did present that back to council because of its significance to our council. I've never found out how much money was obviously donated by the municipality to the Commonwealth Government at the time, but I do think it has some historic significance. And I guess my question would be, where is it located? Is it being conserved, considering it was made of wool bunting, and like, is it being stored in an appropriate way? If we could find out those things, take it on notice. Obviously, I suspect it was actually potentially sent down to the Hunter, but it would, like, I believe it's a historically significant flag as much as the Union Jack has been.
Councillor Rodder, I think we'll have to take that on notice, but I'll ask.
Yeah, look, I believe our archivist has taken that flag, and it would be stored down at the Hunter, which does have a controlled environment, but I will take it on notice and double check for you, Councillor Rodder.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Councillors, that brings us to the end of open council, and we'll move to item 11. Do we have anyone wishing any of the items in confidential?
No, Mr Mayor.
Anyone in the audience wish any items to be brought forward into open? There is none, so councillors, could I have a motion to move into closed council? Councillor Budd, second to Councillor Mears. All those in favour say aye. Aye. I got a bit lost there. I was thinking I was missing something.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Items reported in the closed business paper of council 12.1 and 12.2 were per as the business paper.
Could I have a motion to accept? Councillor Mears, second to Councillor Impey. All those in favour say aye. Aye. We'll declare the meeting closed.